Did you know that Anne of Cleves was the last of Henry VIII's 6 wives to die? Anne of Cleves actually outlived all of the wives, Henry VIII and Henry VIII's son, Edward VI. Although Anne of Cleves never held the title of a beloved queen like Jane Seymour did, she was still respected by the king following their annulment. Anne was given a very comfortable settlement and she was able to live very luxuriously for the rest of her life. Anne was given a very handsome allowance, including the use of a number of manor houses. Anne also became an honorary member of the royal family with the title the King's right dear and right entirely beloved sister. She was also given precedence over all women at the court except for the King's daughters and his wife. Following the death of Henry VIII, Anne of Cleves remained on good terms with her stepchildren, including Mary I, so much so that Anne of Cleves was actually present at the coronation of Mary I. And Mary I later provided her stepmother with Chelsea Old Manor, seen here. And it was here during 1557 that Anne of Cleves' health began to fail her. It was here in the middle of July that Anne dictated her will, and then she later died, perhaps of cancer, on the 16th of July. In her will, Anne of Cleves stipulated that she wanted to be buried according to Catholic rites, and to make sure that her will was carried out, she appointed Queen Mary as her chief executor. In her will, Anne made various gifts of jewellery to her family, to her friends, including a ring to Catherine Brandon, the Duchess of Suffolk, another ring to the Countess of Arundel, and jewels to her stepdaughters, both Mary and Elizabeth. On the day that Anne actually died, her body was embalmed and then placed in a coffin. The coffin was then covered in a cloth of gold with her coat of arms. Tapers were then lit all around her coffin and prayers were said on a daily basis. And then on the 3rd of August, her body was taken from Chelsea to Westminster Abbey. The procession was incredibly grand, and you can see part of the drawing of it here. It was led by men-at-arms carrying 12 banners, secular clerics, singers, the regular clergy, and yeomen dressed in black and carrying torches. Then came 2 heralds and the members of Anne's household on horseback, 50 in all. They were then followed by 2 more heralds with the Bishop of London, Dr. Edmund Bonner, and the Abbot of Westminster. And then central to the procession itself was the hearse with Anne's body in it, and this was drawn by a team of 4 horses all decorated with Anne's heraldic insignia. And then behind the hearse, somewhat traditionally and poignantly, was Anne's riderless horse. And then, of course, bringing up the rear, there were about 20 assorted noblemen and noble women. Inside the abbey itself, the choir was decorated with funeral hangings and the floor was covered with black cloth. The coffin then lay in state overnight, surrounded by candles, and it was attended by the chief mourner, who was Elizabeth, Marchioness of Winchester. The following day, the ceremony was held, and it was concluded with her household officers breaking their staves or staffs and putting them into or on top of the tomb as it was lowered down. Anne was given a rather prestigious burial place on the south side of the high altar, and this is her tomb. It's a very low structure of 3 sections with heraldic devices, which we'll look at now. So this is what it looks like head on, and it's actually thought that the monument was never actually completed. Well, here's an actual close-up of her tomb, and we can see that there are various panels with insignia and heraldic devices relating to Anne of Cleves. This is a lion's head, which is associated with the House of Cleves. And the tomb is also decorated with this panel where we can see A and C, so her initials entwined, and it's surmounted by a crown. And then, of course, in the centre, we have skulls and crossed bones, which all relate to mortality and the passing of time. Curiously, Anne of Cleves was the only of Henry VIII's wives to be buried in Westminster Abbey, and yet her monument is very easily overlooked. This is the opposite side of her tomb, and you can see how it's been completely obscured by all of these later monuments. In fact, this is her tomb. This is the back of it, so I'll just zoom in. So here we go, zooming in, we can see some of the carvings there that have pretty much worn away, and this is the only sort of epitaph that draws your attention to the fact that a queen is buried here, and this was added in the 20th century. So if ever you are on the Tudor trail, make sure that you go and pop into Westminster Abbey and seek it out. It's amazing.